Hello and welcome back to the Girl Fit Method podcast. So on today's podcast episode, I have the incredible Bianca. Hello, Bianca.
Hello, how are you?
I am good. I know you as the BondiBrat.
Yes.
So I came across Bianca on TikTok. Who knows why you were in my feed, and I just got a little bit obsessed with just watching your videos and listening to you just talk and just share about your life. You are so, how do I describe you? I think you're great. When I first watched my very first TikTok, or I watched the first TikTok of you, I thought, like, this girl is great. You do not hold back. Like, you wear your heart on your sleeve. You're so honest and open. And that's something I really respect in somebody, someone that doesn't try to be fake or cover up anything. You're an open book, which I love. And we sort of connected from there. So I'm super excited to have you. Isn't it weird how social media platforms like that can connect people from just like completely different worlds almost, where you would never run into each other, but here we are.
It's insane. It's insane. It's very surreal because you're in Adelaide, I'm in Queensland.
I
We're
know.
in totally different industries. Like, we probably would never actually have crossed paths had it not been for social media and how it brings everyone together and connects everyone. So yeah, it's pretty unreal.
Yeah, and it's so good because there are so many different polarizing opinions, and maybe we'll chat about that, especially considering the industry that you're in. And sometimes I go into your comment sections just for a little scroll.
It's a wild place in those comment
Oh
sections.
my
You never
goodness.
know what you're going to get.
Is it ever? And it's just interesting to see different people's opinions, but also, like, I think because like we would have probably never have even crossed paths, I love that fact because I truly believe that, you know, you've been through stuff I've never been through, and vice versa. We can all learn something from each other. And by being open-minded like that, we've got the opportunity to learn off of each other and just learn more about the world and about people, which then in turn can actually grow us as humans too, if we're open to it, right?
Absolutely.
So, all right,
Absolutely.
let's get to know you like a little bit more. Who are you, Bianca? Let's start back from young Bianca. What was your upbringing like?
Oh my gosh. Okay. My upbringing. So I grew up in Melbourne. So I'm a Melbourne girl originally, and I grew up in the southeastern suburbs of Melbourne. I've got a brother, he's 2 years older than me, and my mum and my dad. And I had a pretty cruisy, normal upbringing. I'd say nothing too crazy. Probably around 14, my parents divorced and had that turbulent teenage years because of that. But my upbringing, I don't really know how to answer this one. It was pretty good. I probably had a very disconnected relationship with my mum and dad from about 16, 17 onwards. I was in and out of home, kicked out. I was living with boyfriends much older than me. I had to grow up pretty quickly. And I would say I didn't really have a parent figure in my life for a few years and very important years. So like my later teens and early 20s. And that was a mutual doing. It wasn't just them being like, I don't want to speak to you. It was very both sides. And I'd say that was pretty difficult, but it really molded me into how I am today. But yeah, like my upbringing from like a childhood and everything was pretty regular, regular Aussie upbringing. It was more so like my late teens, early 20s when I started going through a little bit more turbulence in my life. And that would be like sort of what molded me to who I am today. But yeah, like, I don't know. What else do you want to know?
Well, it's funny because like the first TikTok I saw of you was around you were struggling with binge eating, and that's what popped up on my feed. And I just felt like I needed to reach out to you because I could see that you're in a spot where I recognized I had been before, where you just feel so incredibly kind of hopeless and somewhat out of control, where you've got this thing that seems to control you. And when that's really quite false, actually, you know, we create coping mechanisms for stressful periods in our life that can pop up at any point, and we can feel that those things control really the trajectory of our life or the habits that we are getting ourselves into. We can't quite break when we can, but when you're in that moment, it's really, really difficult and quite scary. And I guess like a lot of the listeners on the podcast have struggled with eating and issues with eating. So like when I heard you talk so candidly about that, first of all, I just was like, so much respect for you for putting it out there. And then secondly, I just wanted to help you in whatever way I possibly could, which I couldn't really, but sometimes just knowing that you're not alone is nice as well.
Yeah, no, you were really sweet. You reached out to me and it meant a lot. Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I could just see you
Um,
hurting.
yeah, I was. I've struggled with eating and food and probably consumption problems my entire life. I think I've been binging and purging since I was about 13 years old, and I'm 30 now. So that's
Wow.
a big chunk of my life. Not consistently all the time, but it has been very regular. It's always been a thing that's come up. And I was in school and everything. I wasn't very good at I wasn't very good in school, but I was very good at sport. And there was a lot of preface put on my physical body, my sporting ability, and all that sort of stuff. And as I was getting older and going through puberty, my body started changing, and I would get comments about my eating. No, you don't eat that. You're going to put on weight. That's, don't eat too much. And that just started giving me a little bit of a complex, and almost as well a little bit of a fuck you complex. I'm going to keep eating. And all these little things. And then obviously your body starts to change a little bit. And next thing I knew, I was purging my food as well. And this was just ongoing for a long time. I didn't really look at it as a bad thing at that time because I was so young. It was just something that I was doing. But then it was progressively happening more and more. And it would be something that was just consumed in my life. If I was going through a hard time, I would reach out to food and find comfort in overconsumption. There was something about just putting food in my mouth that was so comforting, but so shameful. It was disgusting to me. I found it disgusting. Like, I'm just stuffing food into my face. Like, of all the coping mechanisms I've had in my life, I found the most shame around that one, to be honest. And I've been a drug addict before as well. But the food was just, I found it really gross. And because of that, then I didn't really want to talk to anyone about it. And then it was just something that I brought along with me in my life for a very, very long time. And I honestly was so unaware of how many women are actually going through the same thing, and not just women, men as well, with the food consumption and what you do, because food is just so easily accessible now. It is such an easy way to dull your pain or use it as a coping mechanism. And it's also very shameful in a sense because you feel quite gross about it. Like it's got a whole stigma about it, and that's a whole nother ball game, but I feel like it's really hard to talk about. And I was going through I battled with it on and off, on and off, on and off. And then recently I got really good with it. I had it pretty much under control. And then I got rhinoplasty on my face, and it triggered just all these old wounds to come up. And one of them was binging. But because I just had rhinoplasty, I couldn't purge. So I was just binging. And I found myself getting into these really bad cycles because I would binge so much and I wasn't purging. So the next day I woke up feeling absolutely awful. Like, my body was exhausted. I wasn't resting. My body was just trying to process everything that I've been putting through it. And you wake up the next day, you feel heavy, feel lethargic, and it's like, oh, I'm just going to keep eating. And you keep doing it. And then you're like, tomorrow I'm going to stop. And then tomorrow never comes. You just continuously, and before you know it, you're in this really deep cycle, and it's really, really hard to get out of. And I found myself there, quite like in there. My body started changing. I started feeling a lot of shame. I didn't really know what to do or how to get out of this. And so then I was just like, oh, I'm just going to talk about it online and try and put a voice to this part of me instead of judging it and putting shame on it. Because if I keep doing that, I'm just going to stay doing this forever. It's hard to get out of something if you don't acknowledge it for what it is. And so I just started talking about it. And it was really incredible how many people actually, like, not incredible how many people are going through the same thing, but it's just really profound how many people are reaching out and wanting to talk about it as well, and have the exact same mentality about it, that shame and that disgust and that guilt and that self-hatred and for that part of you and just all that judgment.
Yeah.
And then you reached out to me, and it was just like, it just a lot of things. Like, I feel like everything happens for a reason, and me talking about that online, connecting with you, and then all that sorts of things, and like connecting with other people that are going through it just really helps. And it's gotten me to where I am now, which is I feel like I'm on the other side of my binging after, I would say, a good 10 months of on and off quite badly binging and purging as well.
Well done, first of all, because it's hard work. It's really not easy. And like, the thing that I've heard you say so much is shame. And it's so interesting. Like you said, we all use unhealthy coping mechanisms to deal with the stresses in life. But it is really interesting that we connect so much, or we have so much shame around what we put in our mouths, or our habits around our relationship with food. And as you're talking, I was thinking, I wonder if that is because as women, when we're brought up, and like just touching on what you were saying when you were young, where there was such a focus on what you should be eating and what you shouldn't be eating, that you were taught, it's kind of drilled into you from a young age, even if you're not athletic, right? Even if you weren't in the position that you were in, that we're, as women, as little girls, it is drilled into us that what we consume, our weight and our appearance and our body, holds so much weight to what our value is. And so what's the best way to devaluate ourselves, or to self-sabotage really when we are feeling not great about ourselves, is to kind of almost ruin that, because then that takes away even more of our value. It's kind of like shining a mirror or replicating what we're feeling inside in some way that we can hurt ourselves on the exterior, so that we're attracting people that think that we're not good enough, or showing this exterior that shows that we're not good enough, when regardless of what our weight is, it doesn't actually matter. But I think that would be the main reason as to why there is so much shame. I as well had an eating disorder growing up in my late teens as well. I had anorexia, and I didn't even realize either, just like yourself, you kind of get yourself into these habits with food, and before you know it, you're sucked in, and you're in this situation where you're almost like living in this world where food controls you, these bad habits control you, and you don't even quite know what is going on. It's quite scary, and breaking out of that is really incredibly difficult. So the fact that you have, like, now after that binging episode is really amazing. But I want to ask you another question. And that is, we haven't touched on it, which is what you do for a living, right? So maybe I never know what word, like what to use that's you would prefer. Sex worker? Is that what I say?
Yeah, I'm a sex worker, and I work as an escort.
Yes. Okay. So that's how I would say it. Okay, cool. So once again, like, your body, would you say your body is currency in that capacity? Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's very, sometimes it's quite difficult for people to relate to people when I'm talking about like how my body image is and that sort of thing, because my body is my business card. So I'm not only am I damaging my body when I'm binge eating, I'm damaging, my mental health and all these sorts of things. I'm also damaging my income. So a lot of pressure, and it's almost like that pressure is just too much, that what I should be doing and what I need to be doing. And that's not to say that, there is a lid for every sauce, but any sex worker can be any size. But for me, my product and what I put out there as me is a certain way. And that's what I'm comfortable doing. And then when I'm binge eating and doing all these sorts of things to kind of sabotage myself, that's also affecting my work, and then the pressure, and then I don't want to work. I haven't really worked in like 10 months, to be honest. I've had a long, like, on and off, but I've had a very long time off because I've just not liked what I've been seeing in the mirror. And it's not that I physically don't like what I see. What I see is more so a reflection of what I've been doing to myself.
Yeah.
And I see that, and it's hard. It definitely affects my work 100%. And it definitely affects work without a doubt.
It's interesting because we also work with women in all different so we tend to have a lot of girls as well in the modeling industry, entertainment industry, OnlyFans as well, where their body is also their currency. And even to a degree, mine is as well, because whether I like it or not, people will look at me and just choose whether they want to work with me really based on what I look like, which 100%. For me, really, that is like, it does feel like a lot of pressure. But also what I've had to learn to do, and I think this is like the beauty of getting older, really, and going through shit and then realizing that your value doesn't lie in that. But what I've had to learn to do, and I'm sure that's been the case with you, is to detach your body from your worth And the question I get asked all the time is, how do I work on my confidence? How do I work on accepting the way that my body is? And my biggest piece of advice is, number one, to find value in who you are, because who you are is your soul. It's actually got nothing to do with the way that you look. But then secondly, you need to learn to detach this physical body from who you are as a being, so that they're two separate entities. Yes, this is me. This is my arms. Like I'm not perfect, but I like what I've got here. I like what I've got here. But ultimately, if this is taken away from me tomorrow, I'm still who I am inside, which is hard to learn. But for you as well, I mean, there is such a focus on that. And I know that you've gotten to the point now where, look, and none of us are perfect. We will have days that we feel shit, and there's nothing wrong with that. But from your perspective, what's that journey look like for you to be able to learn to accept yourself, but also realize that your value lies in so much more than just your product?
Well, I think first of all, like, you hit a nail on the head with where we value. I think women and men, people, we put value in the wrong things. Value in how we look, what we own, how we're exterior, like what our exterior is, the car we drive, the clothes we wear, all these sorts of things. You can get really caught up in that makes you, when really it doesn't. Like you said, it is your soul. It's your internal world that makes you. And one of the things that have really helped me get to the other side of this was to build my confidence back. And how I've done that is not by looking in the mirror and saying, I'm so hot, which I also do. But how I built my confidence back and feel good again is by building trust back within myself. And how I've been doing that is I've been setting a non-negotiable, or setting something up that I need to do every day, and I need to show up and do it. Whether that be I need to leave the house and go for a 10-minute walk. It can be anything, but you have to do it. And you slowly do this, and you slowly build up a trusting relationship with yourself. And then that brings confidence within yourself, because you're confident that you will show up for yourself. And then those things manifest to other parts of your life, and you can build on that. It's like habit stacking your own life and habit stacking your own confidence back into it. And when you do that, then you start seeing other things outside of just your body. And when you said it's like we're two separate beings, what I like to do with my body is treat my body, or talk to my body, or love my body like it's my best friend. Because really, our bodies do exactly what our mind tells it to do. Our body isn't sitting there shoving food in our face, shoving food in the face, you know what I mean? And then, like, it's not choosing to do that. We're making it. And then we're punishing our body for doing it by not going outside, by not seeing sunlight, by not going to the gym, by not then putting nutritional food into our bodies, you know? And it's like, would you treat your best friend like that? No. If your best friend, had a bad week and ate really badly, then said I don't deserve to go outside, wouldn't you just be like, no, yes, you do. Of course you do. And that's what I've started doing myself. So building confidence is building trust by showing up for myself, and then also just treating my body like it's my best friend. And really just showing gratitude for my body. Even when I binge, it's like, well, I told you to do that and you did, so thank you. Do you know what I mean? Instead of shaming it and being like, oh, you're so gross. Oh, look at you. Oh, look at this, you know? Because it's like your body is doing everything. It's like the most loyal servant, and then it does everything you ask it to, and then you turn around and ridicule it. Of course you're going to have a detachment with your body, your mind, and your soul when you do that. So for me, I've just really been trying to just be kinder. When you say be kind to yourself, it really can just mean anything, but really just show up for yourself, and then show love to yourself. Even when you feel like you're kind of off track, just acknowledge it and don't shame it. Just, love on it a little bit.
Well, that's learning. I mean, from what I'm hearing you say there is I think what we can do is sometimes expect too much of ourselves and go into something, even when you do have some kind of issue with eating, like just say binge eating. And I see this all the time with our clients, is that they will quote unquote slip up or make a mistake, and then that's it, the situation that you were in recently, where it was like, you binged, I'll start again tomorrow, you binge again, you binge again, you binge again. And it's almost like, all right, well, I've stuffed it up now. What's the point in trying again? And then it's that narrative in your mind where you are just hating yourself. You're hating your body. And really what you're hating is who you are. You're hating the action that you're taking. Your body, like you said, has done absolutely nothing. But in order to fix the habit, you need to fix that narrative in your mind. I'm assuming the habit stacking, I'm pretty sure it's James Clear. Is it James Clear who wrote Atomic Habits? who talks about habit stacking. I could be completely wrong.
I think so. I'm not sure who
Is
wrote
it?
it, but I do.
Or is that? I don't know if I've gotten that wrong, but yeah, that book, it is incredible because a lot of people will get themselves in a situation like that and then they'll go, you know what? I don't feel motivated to go out and get 10 minutes of sunshine. The truth is you just wait on motivation, or you feel like you need to wait until you feel like doing something, you'll be waiting for the rest of your life. It's about taking action, but also not creating huge goals for yourself. Even if we take it back to eating, I'm never going to binge again. Well, you probably will, right?
You
and
will.
and if you can prepare yourself for that, you're able to then view it as, okay, this is a learning curve. This is why I don't want to do this again. I'm going to pick myself up. I'm going to show myself grace and kindness. Practice that. And then the more that you do that, the less that behavior will have control over you, or those urges will have control over you.
Yeah. Absolutely. I've been doing this. So what I've been like, I was actually like, I go on the beach, I walk on the beach and I just talk to myself. And I was chatting to myself about what I've been doing as well. Like one of the really profound thing that's helped me get out of the binging. And it actually has nothing to do with the binging itself. So what I've been doing is I set up a morning routine, and it's a non-negotiable. Every single morning I do the same thing. No matter what, I show up for myself and do it. And that's go jump in the water, walk outside, get a coffee, and go to the gym. Even if I walk into the gym and I leave, I just need to go. My body just needs to practice getting up and going. And I do it every single day. So if I do binge that night, because generally I binge at night, I wake up the next day and I still get up and do it because I'm doing it every single day. It's becoming a habit. So even when I binge, it's not about the binge, it's about what you do after. It's okay, you've binged, it's happened, it's fine, all right? You've done it. Even what I even tell myself is, if I'm binging, I'm binging. Let's just do it. If I'm going to binge, instead of bullying myself and shaming myself and being fucking mean to myself, all right, I'm binging, I'm here, it's done. Done. Then the next day I wake up, it's a new day, and I get up and I do my habit. I go up and I do my morning routine, and I get up and I go. And that's it. It's not about really the binge. It's about what you do after, because we are human. We are mistakes. You are going to binge again. You know, you are going to slip up, because that's life. But every single slip up is what propels you into the future of where you want to be and where you're going to go. And it's about what you do after, not what you're doing during. And I think that's what's really helped me. So the other night I binged. I started cooking a meal, and I had a great meal. And then I had a protein dessert. And then I was like, what can I eat next? And before I knew it, I was binging. And I was like, okay, I binged. I ate a lot more than, when you're binging. And then I walked into the toilet and I looked at the toilet and I thought, all right, now I'm going to be sick. And I thought, no, I binged. It's fine. I looked in the mirror and I'm like, it's fine. I've binged. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. I don't need to punish myself and make myself sick for doing it. Just go to bed, have a good sleep, be kind. Like, it's fine. I went to sleep. I woke up the next morning. Yeah, I felt shit. My body was unrested. I felt swollen. I felt stuffy. I did not want to get out of bed. But I made that decision right then and there to build this trust and confidence back in with myself. That it doesn't matter about the binge, it's what I do next. And get yourself up. So I just feel like it's so important to make a plan outside of the binging. Don't have a plan for what you do when you binge. Have a plan for every single day and a routine and some sort of structure. So when you do binge, you have something to fall back on. You're not so lost and feeling hopeless. You have a routine that you've created. It's like a safety net for your life for when you do slip up. And that has been profound for me. Absolutely life-changing. It's just an amazing change. And I just feel like it's really, really helpful. Another thing I do is I'm really selective with the way that I talk about binging. I don't identify with it as it's a part of me. Like, I'm a binge eater, I'm a recovering binge eater, and that sort of thing. Because my brain hears I'm a binge eater. Your brain doesn't work in there, it just picks up what you're saying. So I say I've healed binge eating. I talk as if it's my future self. Even if I've just binged the night before, I talk as if I'm healing it, not that I'm trying to, that I have, that I am. And little things like that have really, really helped me and just feel more positive about it, and less like it's got me by a chokehold. Like, it's now I've taken the control back.
Well,
and it's really freeing.
what I'm hearing is that you feel like you are worth not identifying as that. And that behavior is not behavior that you deserve or self-talk that you deserve. You've chosen that regardless of sometimes your actions, whether your actions don't align with the person that you are or what you feel you should be doing, you have the love for yourself or the acceptance for yourself to not stay in that and not to identify that and not to actually put up with that. Even with just the abuse that you spew in your mind, like, you know exactly what it's like when you're in that negative mindset, you've done something wrong, you will just beat yourself up. And that is what keeps us stuck. You know, we know about shame breeds more shame. The more you stay in shame, the more shame you feel. Then what happens after that is your actions will align with however you're feeling about yourself. And it's choosing to detach. You know, sometimes we are, you know, we're not perfect. None of us are perfect. But who do we want to be? Who's the person that we believe we are, the person that we want to become? And what would that person do? And that's exactly what you're doing, which takes a lot of like strength. A lot of courage and a lot of strength.
Thank you. If you shame a part of yourself, you're telling that part of yourself that there's something wrong with it. And then they're never going to heal. It's like when you're yelling at someone or treating something, like, you know, if someone does something wrong and you yell at them, you know, you're telling them that they're wrong and you're putting shame on them. So you do that to yourself. If you're binge eating and you feel gross about yourself or whatever it may be, and then you shame that and don't acknowledge it, you're just telling that part of you that it's wrong, that there's something wrong with it, and it's going to keep doing it. And like, you know, so my way about it is just trying not to do that, remove that shame, be like, okay, it's okay, you've done that, it's fine, it's okay, I love you, and let's just, tomorrow's a new day. Tomorrow's a new day, and that's it. It really can be that simple, but it's really hard to get to that simplicity of it when you're really deep in that shame and when you're really in there, really being so awful to yourself. You know, it's take a process, and that's why support system's so good. That's why social media has been amazing for this, like even connecting with you and just other people, you know, just talking about it and finding other people in different stages of their, you know, binge eating disorder or whatever it may be, in stages where they're at, and you can like talk to them and get a support system. It's really helpful, and then you can get out of it eventually. But I feel like talking about it is really, really important. I am just rambling.
I'm a rambler too, but it's like a lot of women as well, we're verbal processors, and sometimes you just need to talk out what the heck is going on in your head, or even journal it, because you would know. And I've done this where like I'm going through something, and until I actually write it down or I say it out loud, I'm like, oh shit, do I actually, that's what I'm thinking. I didn't even realize that's what was swirling around in my mind. And until you know that, you actually can't address it. So it's just going to stay as a thought and as a belief in your head when you're not even aware of that's how you're viewing yourself or how you're viewing the situation. I just wanted to touch on one quick thing as well. When it comes to these like bad habits, would you say a big part of why girls find it hard to get out of the situation where they are, let's just say binging or whatever like bad habit you have, is that when that thing happens, you feel like a bad person and you start to experience all of these negative emotions like shame, like guilt, like fear, like anger. And we don't actually want to sit with those feelings and accept those feelings. And so how do we not deal with those is we distract ourselves and we continue on with that bad behavior. Well, not the bad behavior, but the behavior that's not serving us. We're like learning to actually sit with it and sit in like the yuck is so powerful, because you realize it's not as scary as what you think it is. You just need to get over it. And in order to get over it, you need to be okay with experiencing it.
Yeah. The more uncomfortable you get with these emotions and sitting with it and being present with it, the better you'll be, the more equipped you'll be for when it happens again. Because these emotions, I don't even like to say emotions are good and bad anymore. I just feel like they're just emotions, and that's it. They all serve a purpose. But there are certain ones where we like to avoid. It is uncomfortable. You don't want to sit in it. So you'll do other things to avoid it, like you said. But yeah, I just feel like if you sit in it more and get uncomfortable being uncomfortable, it sucks. Sometimes it's really uncomfortable, but like eventually it gets easier. It's like a skill, any skill. Like the more you practice it, the better you'll be.
Yeah. couldn't agree more. And I think all the negative habits that we create in life will usually come from a place of fear. And if we stop fearing everything and we understand that ultimately we're actually in control of everything, nothing is going to threaten us or take our life. Like, none of these feelings will actually damage us. But what will damage us is the habits and the behavior that come from us being too scared to actually just accept those feelings and know that that's just a part of life. But thank you so much for coming on, Bianca. I want everyone to know where we can find you. You're one of my favorite people on TikTok. Do you know that? I'm a big fan. Awesome. I love you. I think you're great. You're so entertaining.
so surreal.
It's so weird. It's so weird when you watch someone like on a social media channel, then you're actually talking to them. You're like, yeah, they are like a real person. But you're incredible. Yeah. Where can we all find you?
So you can find me on TikTok. It's BondiBrtat_, and then on Instagram it's BondiBrtat_.
Awesome.
And that's how you can find me.
Thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks.
A little bit. So I like to teach my girls how to optimize their results for the amount of effort that they put in, show up for themselves so that they can actually do what they say they'll do, and just help them realize that they're capable of healing and living up to what their best and healthiest version of themselves is. So I've been doing that for a couple of years, but I've always been a big science nerd. So I studied Bachelor of Physiology at Melbourne Uni, and I've also been into lifting for a really long time. And over the last few years, I've been taking on a lot of courses just to upskill and taking my nutrition certifications as well. So I'm pretty well versed in the nutrition physiology space thanks to my education. But I have to say, nothing beats experience. Like, hands down, that is the best teacher. You get into the industry expecting one thing, which is, I'm going to help girls get jacked and stop fearing food. And look, that's definitely a huge part of the role, don't get me wrong. But then as you gain more exposure, you just start to work with different clients who come to you with all sorts of problems, and you kind of get thrown into the deep end where you're seeing the same conditions constantly, especially amongst young women. So in the last 9 months, especially, I've been finding the same conditions pop up, there's chronic problems and whatnot. And instead of turning clients away and saying, sorry, I can't help you, I really found it interesting. And I thought that there was a huge gap in the market there that needed to be addressed. And so I decided to rise up to the challenge and educate myself further so that I can manage and coach these clients. And look, there's heaps of outsourcing that is involved and collaboration with other healthcare professionals that are in my network. So I'm so thankful to have a team around me. So I'm obviously not doing it alone. But yeah, you're constantly forced to level up your skill set, further your education, get certified. So that's been my journey. Definitely not what I signed up for or expected, but it keeps the job interesting and it gives me so much more purpose than I ever expected I would get from this role. And if I'm being honest, like, it's so much more fulfilling to me when I see major health improvements and someone's quality of life drastically improving compared to like helping a girl grow an ass. Although, to be fair, that's probably a close second. So that's where I'm at.
I mean, that's all great. I think like with health and fitness, it's always fantastic to have some kind of aesthetic goal, right? And a lot of why we exercise is because of that. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. However, if that is your sole purpose, you're never going to be consistent with anything within health and fitness. But the other thing as well to keep in mind is that, really when we talk about nutrition, when we talk about training, it should come from a place of respect and wanting to live a long, healthy life. Like, longevity is so important. Mental health is so important. Energy levels are so important as well. And that really needs to be kind of like the foundation as to why we do what we do. And what I've heard from what you said, like, I love the fact that you're passionate, and it's so clear to see that you're passionate. And I think a great way to tell a good coach is someone that wants to help. And when they are, when there is an issue, because it happens, right? Calorie deficit, we always talk about like calories in, calories out. Yes. However, there is a lot more to it, right? That's not really the be all and end all. And there are a lot of women out there that do struggle to see those results, and you do need to work, and a coach can absolutely change your life. However, that coach needs to be willing to want to upskill, learn, so they can actually help with more, I guess, like more difficult scenarios. And that's kind of what we're going to delve into today. We really want to talk and focus on girls suffering with PCOS, and then as a result, insulin resistance. So I'm going to hand it over to you. Maybe let's break those two things down. Let's talk about PCOS, what that is, and then we can transition into what insulin resistance is as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, you're right. Like, obviously we work in the body composition space, but these conditions come up a lot, right? And just to give you some statistics, like PCOS is prevalent in 8 to 15% of young women in Australia. So like, if you look at my sample size of clientele, it makes sense, and it matches up with those figures. 1 in every 8 to 10 clients has it. Type 2 diabetes on the rise. It's more than doubled in the last 20 years. So if you're a healthcare professional, it's almost a sure thing that you're going to come across this. So PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, it is, to get through the long and the short of it, it's essentially failure for ovulation to take place, or failure of ovulation. So you think about the egg maturing in the ovaries and then being released to obviously either become a baby if fertilized, or it'll release as a period with menstrual blood. Basically, the egg is not maturing as it needs to, and it's not ovulating. And there's a whole bunch of hormonal imbalances that are caused by that, or that cause it, so to speak. But the biggest thing is that it's characterized by excessive androgens, which are male dominant hormones like testosterone, DHEA. And that's what causes hirsutism. So we're talking facial hair, acne. So you've got all of these failed ovulation attempts, which cause cysts in the ovaries, as well as all of these symptoms, such as the male dominant features that we're seeing. And then we've got another element of that, which is insulin. Now, I thought to talk about insulin resistance first before we kind of link the two together. So insulin, essentially, we got to cover off the basics. It is a hormone. I'm sure we've all heard of what it is. It helps us regulate our blood sugar levels. So when we eat a meal, our body converts the food into glucose, which is in its simplest form pretty much sugar. And that is the primary source of fuel that our bodies need. So the pancreas detects a rise in blood sugar levels, and then it releases insulin as a response. Insulin then goes to the body and says, hey guys, we've got a lot of glucose up in this bloodstream. I need y'all to take it in and restore the balance. Okay. Now, if that balance is not restored and our blood glucose levels get too high, then we suffer from hypoglycemia. And that's characterized by an increase in thirst and hunger, blurred vision, frequent urination, slow healing wounds, brain fog, headaches, fatigue, skin tags. And if left untreated, can evolve or devolve into prediabetes and then type 2 diabetes. Now, if we take a closer look into how insulin works specifically, it binds to the receptors of our cells. So I like to think of receptors as like the bodyguards that sit on the surface of cells, and they kind of surveillance the external environment. It's tell the cell what's going on and just tell them what to do. So insulin comes and binds with this receptor, or like has a chat with the bodyguards, is kind of how I explain it. And the bodyguards then alert the cell, hey guys, we need to start preparing to take glucose in from the bloodstream. So then it signals or triggers a signal cascade, which is essentially a series of processes that bring channels, or almost glucose gates, you could call them, into the cell membrane to let the glucose come in. Okay. So how does insulin resistance develop? In today's day and age, with the high stress environment that we put ourselves in, modern day SAD eaters as well. SAD is standard American diet. And also with conditions like PCOS all on the rise, we're seeing people eat a high fat, high sugar diet and lead sedentary lifestyles. And over time, that can cause cells to become more resistant to the effects of insulin, simply because they have chronically high blood sugar levels. So The reason why this happens is because the insulin signaling pathway becomes dysfunctional. And this develops simply because the cell can't handle having that much sugar inside it. So the mitochondria, which we all know, the powerhouse of the cell, Year 9 biology shout out, is responsible for converting glucose into energy. And when you just have constant demand of glucose coming in for the mitochondria to process, it pretty much says, hey guys, I can't do this anymore. I cannot handle the demands of metabolizing this exorbitant amount of glucose. And so the cell initiates an insulin block to prevent the uptake of even more glucose that it has to process. And this happens through two key mechanisms. The first one is the cell actually decreases the number of insulin receptors that are present on the cell surface. So less bodyguards, aka less insulin binding with the bodyguards or talking with them, and then the signal doesn't even reach the cell. The second thing it does is the signal transduction fails to take place normally. That brings those glucose channels to the surface to open up and bring the glucose in. Okay, so the glucose is being shut out, and it's the cell is essentially ignoring the signaling that insulin is trying to provide. So it's constantly rejecting it. And that's what leads to insulin resistance. So what happens? We know blood sugar levels are remaining high. Insulin isn't really being listened to, but the pancreas is still detecting high glucose. So it's going to compensate by releasing even more insulin in the hopes of regulating the blood glucose levels. And it creates this vicious cycle, leading to even more resistance from the body cells, despite having higher levels of insulin. And then eventually the pancreas is unable to maintain that release of chronically elevated levels of insulin. And then that's when the production shuts down. Insulin is downregulated, and then that's when prediabetes kicks in, because you actually don't have enough insulin to handle the amount of sugar in your blood. So that is insulin resistance in a nutshell. And just one final note around the interaction between PCOS and insulin resistance. So there is a relationship between androgens or high androgens and high insulin, sorry. So the pattern is not clear, but we know that there's a relationship between these two factors. We know that when you have high levels of androgens, it promotes insulin resistance. The mechanisms are still unclear as to how, but also having more insulin triggers more androgen release, because insulin acts on the thecal cells of the ovaries, as well as the adrenal glands, which releases more androgens. So it's this almost like a chicken or an egg situation.
That's what I was going to say. What's triggering what then? Yeah.
It can be both. It could be PCOS comes from obesity or insulin resistance. It could be a genetic thing. It could be high androgens that lead to insulin resistance. And it's very variable, extremely variable between people. So we know that when people have or present with PCOS, we need to start addressing insulin resistance, because it tends to have a direct effect on the high androgen symptoms as well.
Yeah, and it's very frustrating. I mean, we've worked with a lot of women that do have PCOS, and it's frustrating for them because they feel like they're putting a lot of work in and really not seeing any results. And it can be because of that, because we do need to really alter lifestyle factors. We need to alter the way that someone's eating. And if that's not addressed, you can try and do what you think is going to help, which may help someone that doesn't suffer with this issue, and they can get those results. And this is where it comes back once again to like calories in, calories out can feel very frustrating for lots of people, because it's just not that simple for some. And in particular for women, because we are so hormonally sensitive, there are so many things going on that can absolutely impact our ability to be able to see the results that we're wanting to see. So let's talk about what we would do. We have someone come in who has got PCOS. They're finding it very difficult to lose weight. They've got low energy levels. They're suffering with all of these, irregular cycle. Where do we start? Do we look at lifestyle factors first, or do we look at nutrition, or a bit of both?
Oh, everything. I take a really holistic approach. And I think that's the best way to handle cases like this. And look, before I even get into how I would coach a client through it, I think the most important thing you need to do, the first thing you need to do, is create a safe space for the client to ensure that they don't feel judged. And more often than not, the only thing that they're going to get, the only advice they're going to get from their doctors, from the healthcare system, maybe from other coaches, is you just need to lose weight and cut out carbs. And unfortunately, that's just not helpful. Like, they know that, we all know that, but that's more so the end goal rather than the process of losing weight. And oftentimes cutting out carbs isn't viable for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that you approach this with empathy, because you'll hear this time and time again. Women have consistently been failed by the traditional medical system. We know women who report their symptoms tend to be taken less seriously than men. We're told that our symptoms are all in our head. It's just anxiety. Even something as simple as getting an eye infusion, so much harder for a woman than a man, despite needing it more than them, because we literally menstruate. Like, it will, and I've seen it with one of my clients recently. She had declining iron levels for years, and her doctor told her everything was fine, and it had to get really bad before they gave her supplements. And even then, it's not as effective. Whereas her brother had slightly less than efficient iron levels and was immediately recommended to get an eye infusion. So
I also think, oh, sorry, I was going to say, I also think that what's very common as well with women in this situation is just getting put on the pill, and then that's supposed to fix everything, when it can absolutely exacerbate things really, really badly.
That's that.
Yeah,
it's not just the diagnostics, it's the solutions. You're giving them Band-Aid solutions, like, without addressing the root cause. And we know that there are so many dangerous ramifications of going on the pill. We're not informing or educating women as we should be, and telling them what their options are. Telling a client or a patient to go on metformin instead of telling them to fix up their diet and address their stress levels is a huge flaw in the system. So as a coach, if you are going to approach this or approach a client like this, I think it's really important to educate them on what is really going on, and that a pill isn't going to fix everything, and they need to approach this from a holistic perspective. Okay.
So let's jump into that. Let's talk first of all about lifestyle factors that people need to address first off.
Okay, I'm going to start with mindset. Mindset is probably the first and most important thing. Do you believe you can heal and empower yourself to take matters into your own hands? Or are you going to victimize yourself and accept that this is your situation and this is how you're going to live forever? There is a huge difference between those who just accept their condition and those who take charge of their health. And I think this is a conversation you need to have with your client and empower them and say, hey, go on YouTube, hear the success stories of people who have reversed their condition naturally. It's going to take a lot of time. Obviously, you have to be very upfront with the client about what is involved, but really establishing a good mindset from the jump. And that education comes in handy as well. If they don't know what their options are, they may not believe that there's an option to heal. And then also, just from like a bottom-up perspective, is just addressing the state that they're in. Are they always in fight flight? Are they always in this persistent overstimulated nervous system and constantly have cortisol pumping through their bloodstream, chronic inflammation, poor emotional regulation and coping skills, mental well-being is absolutely crap? Like, if you've got all of this low-hanging fruit to address, you'll be so surprised by just how much your symptoms can improve by addressing these things. Nutrition is definitely going to be a key pillar to healing, but the lifestyle interventions of just ensuring that you have a good routine, you're addressing emotional trauma, you truly empower yourself to take charge, and approach this from a physiological, a psychological, and a spiritual lens, that will make a huge difference with collaborating with your client to heal.
Yeah, I love that. All right, let's talk about training, because what I've found a lot with women that come to us that are frustrated and can't lose weight, that may have some sort of hormonal issue, might not be PCOS, but it could be PCOS as well, is that they're so frustrated at their situation that they just start to overtrain. So more exercise would be better, more. Let's talk about the negative impacts that can actually have and how counterproductive that can be to that end result that they're wanting to achieve.
Yeah, well, you're going to burn yourself out very quickly if you do that. And again, we want to put the body in a state of healing. And if you're doing an extreme amount of intense exercise, you're just fighting an uphill battle. So Yes, exercise is fantastic. And we'll talk about weight training specifically for insulin resistance and how it can drastically resensitize you to insulin. Fantastic. But within bounds or within limits, you should weight train. It's really good for you, but you don't need to be going to failure on every set and pushing yourself to the point where you're crawling out of the gym on all fours. You don't need to do cardio that's really intense. In fact, this literature suggests it's actually counterproductive because it can release a lot more cortisol than your body needs. So the best advice I would suggest or give based on what we know in the literature is low intensity weight training, a few days a week, minimal to no cardio. Of course, walks and stuff like that are fine, but really just tuning in with your body, just recognize what your limits are. That's where I would go.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. All right, let's chat about nutrition because this is really what our main focus is. Where do we start?
Yeah, so heaps of strategies. And I think when it comes to nutrition, whether it's PCOS or even just a client who's perfectly healthy, we know there's no one size fits all approach. Some thrive with macro tracking, others don't. Some love meal plans, others prefer flexibility. So the same principle is going to apply when you're working with these conditions. And again, as a coach, your role, first and foremost, is to understand your client. You've got to know who you're dealing with and what their preferences are. So the biggest thing that I tell my clients if they have insulin resistance is that it's reversible, and that we can fix it with nutrition and, of course, all the other holistic lifestyle interventions. But if I'm being honest, and we all know this, a low-carb diet is best. The less carbs that you eat, the lower your blood sugar levels will be. And we basically want to regulate the blood sugar levels. It's not necessarily about how many carbs you eat as much as it's avoid the spikes of blood sugar, to avoid the insulin spikes. This gives your body time to become resensitized to the action of insulin. Now, in saying so, I've seen cases where some clients can handle a lot more carbs than we think, like 200 grams of carbs a day, depending on a lot of things like their activity levels, the amount of muscle they have, their stress status, age, the quality of the carbs they consume. So I wouldn't say like you've got to jump into keto immediately unless the client is willing. I mean, it could be a last resort, not a first, especially if you're an active individual. It's going to be really hard to train without carbs.
Yeah.
And even if you go low carb for a long time, we know it's not sustainable. So if you're going to reintroduce the carbs eventually, you better have a good plan to manage it and have good strategies. And also just one more thing I want to point out before I actually get into these strategies is a lot of girls have a poor relationship with food already, a history of eating disorders. They've already demonized carbs for many, many years. So telling them to go low carb may actually worsen that. And they probably won't even stick to the diet anyway, which defeats the purpose of telling them to go low carb in the first place. So
it can end up being quite triggering.
Yes.
And as you're talking, I'm thinking to myself exactly that, I'm thinking of all of the girls that do fear carbs and we work so hard to get them to introduce that into their diet. But what we need to think about here is this is actually taking, and this is where food can be medicine, right? Like there is approaches that are necessary in certain situations. It's not that a carbohydrate is a bad thing, but for someone in a certain health state, then maybe that's not going to be the food that serves you right now. And it can be really difficult to get your head around that, especially if you've got a history of disordered eating or an eating disorder. And I guess that's just the benefit of working with a coach, how that's going to be really necessary for you. I'm just mindful of time. I really want to get into this strategies around nutrition. I guess let's really, I'm going to hand it over to you. Maybe if we can pick 5. I'm not sure how many you've got strategies that you like to use with your clients that maybe anyone that is listening would be able to kind of utilize.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got about 4 or 5. So let's start with quality carb sources. We've got to avoid, for the most part, refined sugars or carbs that are typically high in GI because that causes the blood sugar spike. And a nice little guideline that I like to use with my clients is swap the whites for browns. So a brown carbohydrate like brown rice instead of white rice or, whole wheat pasta instead of white pasta, we're pretty much keeping the fibrous casing of the carbohydrate that stabilizes blood sugar levels. And that's typically what's removed with standard processing. But you'll often find that when you eat these carbs, not only do you avoid that crash, that sugar crash or the bloating, but you feel better. So I think it's important to recognize what foods you can tolerate well. And that comes down to intuitive eating as well, but just paying attention to what you can do well with. And alongside that, like quality carbs matters and whole food sources. And but also, if you are going to have refined carbohydrates or any kind of carb for that matter, avoid naked carbs. So this is really good for the instances where you do want to have a slice of cake for your birthday, or you want to honor a craving so that you don't end up falling back into patterns of disordered eating. Yes, we want to take on that approach of 80-20, but how do we optimize the 20% of the time when you are eating refined carbs so that you can eat smart and not spiral and feel like you've ruined your progress? So what I would suggest is to pair the refined or the fast absorbing carbohydrate with a slow digesting fat or protein source. So obviously I'm not saying eat chocolate with a piece of steak, but what I'm saying is we can tack on the piece of chocolate right after you've had your meal, because the steak takes a long time to digest. The broccoli is very starchy and takes time again to digest. So it slows everything down. And then when you have that piece of chocolate right afterwards, you probably won't have that crash. And it's also a double whammy because you'll probably end up eating less of it given how full you are from the meal that you just ate. So carb pairing is a really good way to turn a high GI carbohydrate into a low GI meal. Weightlifting. We've spoken about this, but I wanted to talk about just why it's so good to improve your insulin sensitivity. The more muscle that you have, the more storage space you have for glucose. Every time you use your muscles, you are utilizing glucose to contract, okay? So that's why you see people or athletes specifically, who eat 300, 400, 500 grams of carbs a day, and they're still super lean because they can utilize that glucose really, really well. And the more that you weight train over time and the bigger that your muscles get, the more storage space or room you have to fill the muscle cell with glycogen or glucose, okay? So weight lift and also have most of your carbs in and around your training when you're most sensitive to the insulin signaling as you're trying to replenish the glycogen stores or glucose stores in your muscles.
Yeah, that's a great point. Another reason why girls should be lifting weights, and that's unfortunately not the advice that's given when it comes to weight loss, especially with women that have PCOS. It's just move more, just move more, just move more. Let's talk about like what you actually need to do and what that should look like. Okay, awesome. Any other tips in particular around nutrition at all?
Around nutrition, I think some people might find better results from going cold turkey with carbs for a few months and just speeding up the healing process and then introducing carbs slowly. That's a conversation you need to have with your client. I'm not opposed to keto. I'm not opposed to carnivore. I think it's very context dependent, but the long run, the long game is how do we incorporate carbs in a way that doesn't feel super restrictive, but also does not worsen your condition. Yes. So whichever route you take, the client still needs to be empowered with smart tools to manage their nutrition for the long run.
Yeah, I think that's important. And another really important point to make is that this is not going to be forever either. Like the purpose of doing all of this is to heal it, right? So you can reintroduce carbohydrates, and it might look like you may not be able to eat as much as maybe as much as somebody else can, but you should be able to consume carbohydrates down the track if you do the work to begin with. So if you can keep that in mind, if you can think this is not going to be forever, I just need to focus on getting myself to a place where I'm healthier so I can start to reintroduce those carbohydrates. I guess like it doesn't feel as bad. It's not like you're stuck having to deprive yourself for the rest of your life. There's a date, an expiration date on it that where you're going to be able to include those kinds of foods back into your diet, which can feel a bit easier to stick to.
Yeah, it's all mindset. Like I said at the start, like you've got to start there and end there. Like going into this journey with your client, you've got to tell them, hey, look, you might have to cut out carbs for a few months if that's something that you're okay with, but look at the long trajectory. And that really shifts mindsets, and the client feels empowered to know that they can get through this. They can get through this hard time because there's better times coming.
Yeah.
But yeah,
You're not stuck,
that's
right? You're not
yeah,
stuck.
you're not.
And there's nothing wrong
No.
with you as well. Like, I think we can sometimes internalize it when someone feels like they're doing all the right things. It's so deflating and it can kill your confidence. You're trying so hard and you're just not seeing those results. And it might be that maybe your energy isn't directed down the right channel. So there's always hope. Mary, you've just been an absolute, like, you're just so knowledgeable. You're incredibly passionate. Just want to say again, thank you so much for joining us. If any of the girls listening want to know more about you and what you do, where can we find you?
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a pleasure being on here. So if you want to find me on the socials, I am at Snatched Fitness PT, or the website, if you want to work with me, is snatchedfitness.com.au. So I'm pretty active on the socials. So if you ever want to message me, hit me up with a DM. I'm more than happy to help you.
And we'll make sure to link. My absolute pleasure.
Yeah.
We'll make sure we link all of those in the show notes as well, so you can find her. She's incredible. Thanks again, Mary.